All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our panel for today. I am so excited to be your moderator. My name is Carlie Maddux. I am one of the chair people for the Healthy Mind Collective. And so today we are going to talk about ADHD and being diagnosed as an adult. So everybody on our panel today is someone who has been diagnosed with ADHD in adulthood. I have ADHD, but I have been diagnosed with ADHD since I was a kid. I was on medication for a lot of the time growing up and then made a decision when I went to college to stop. And most recently, within the past couple of years, got back on medication. So I understand their journey. However, I've been diagnosed since I was a child, whereas they were just recently diagnosed within the past couple of years as an adult. So I can't wait to welcome our panel. Let's get them in here. Hello.
Hey, Carlie.
Hi. Hey. So this is our panel for today. We have Heather Johnson. Am I supposed to let you guys introduce yourselves? Cody Gilkeson. We have Sam Silver and Miss Meghan Kelley.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
So I explained a little bit about what we're going to talk about. And so let's just dive right in. So our first question for today is, let's talk about your diagnosis. How old were you when you got diagnosed, and what was your initial reaction? So we will start. I'm just going to go down the line. Heather, let's start with you.
I've actually been diagnosed for less than a year now. I'm 35 now, and I was diagnosed in February of this year. And I think the first reaction I had when I got a diagnosis was relief to have an answer and understand kind of why things were the way they were, why things were hard, why my brain always felt all over the place. So a lot of relief.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah. And Cody?
So I'm 37. I was diagnosed earlier this year when I was 36, in April of this year. And it sort of was a game changer for me because I have had a lot of other mental health diagnoses in my life, and none of them exactly felt like they fit. So what it turns out was we were treating symptoms and not the underlying problem, which is ADHD. So learning that, and when I took the ADHD test with my therapist, she came back and she was like, well, there's no question there. I've never seen anyone score this high. I'm like, oh, I thought it was going to be like, maybe you have it. It's like, no, you're pretty seriously, in the category here. So, my initial reaction was like, okay, wait, I need to review my whole life and see if this makes sense. That was my initial gut reaction.
Awesome. Sam, what about you?
My late 30s, about the same time we were having my daughters checked. One of my daughters has autism, so we were having her checked for autism. And at the same time, they were trying to find autism diagnosis, and at the same time, we're talking about ADHD and how close related to each other. And they put down the list, and I'm like, yep. Can you still hear me? They went down the list of symptoms, and I checked the boxes. Every time they said something, I said, oh my gosh, that's me. and it was an epiphany. And I went back into all my history of my life, and made a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. Whenever you finally, get that diagnosis and it all clicks together. Megan, what about you?
Hello. So when I actually started or learned that I had ADHD about 4 years ago, I had decided to go back to college, and I was really struggling. So it wasn't something that came to me. I actually went and actively sought out to see if that was a diagnosis, because I saw how much I was struggling on focusing, and and all these like flashbacks from like college when I was a kid, and school and stuff came back. And so when I heard that it was my diagnosis, I was happy. I was like, oh, okay, great. There's an answer. Let's like figure out how to deal with it now, versus, getting upset that there was, something wrong with me. It was like, oh, that's what it is. Okay, now we can move forward and figure out what to do next.
Yeah, I agree. I think from everybody, it sounds like it was a huge relief, right? Just to like know that there was actually a diagnosis for what you've been feeling all of these years throughout your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our next question is, many people describe being diagnosed late in life as connecting the dots. Did you find yourself going back through your childhood experiences and noticing patterns or situations that made more sense given your diagnosis? And I know y'all can talk. A couple of you guys just said that, right? Like you went back through your childhood memories and were like, oh, this makes so much sense now. But Cody, what about you?
Totally. Yeah. So, for me, I've only ever really identified, oh, I think this person may have ADHD when I'm talking about a child. And I didn't experience a lot of what I would call typical symptoms of it as a child, because I don't know, for whatever reason, I grew up in the South. And for me, elementary, primary, middle, high school, grade school was not difficult for me. I really didn't have to try very hard. And then it made more sense when I got to college and things were ramped up. It was much harder. I couldn't just coast by, and I had to focus and study. Like, it just did not work. I was not great at college. Like, it took a monumental effort on my part to get through even the easiest of classes, with cram sessions and study sessions and doing some learning techniques that are really unhealthy for your brain. You know what I mean? Like just total, like the crash diet of studying, kind of deal, just to get by. And I couldn't cope with the fact that like everything in my life educationally had been easy up until this point. And now it was like the struggle, and other people weren't having such a hard time because they had learned skills, in their childhood. But like, yeah, that's what really, I started connecting the dots of like, this is why college was more hard for me than for other people. Yeah.
Yeah. And so whenever I first came on, I announced that, everybody on this panel, including myself, right, have ADHD. The difference is that I was diagnosed as a child and you guys were all diagnosed as adults. So for me, Ray, you're talking about your college experience. I stopped my medication when I went to college because I was like, I don't need it. I'm going to be a dance major. I need my creative brain. But my world changed completely when I stopped taking it. And yes, college was very hard for me from doing that. Yeah. And Megan, I know that you kind of had a similar experience. We kind of talked about that a little earlier with your growing up experience.
Yeah, I had very similar experience to Cody. I was a straight A student. I was always doing well. There was no problems, but I was also always a challenge in the classroom, and nobody really knew what to do with me because it wasn't like I was doing bad in school and I was disruptive. I was slightly disruptive and I was doing great in school. So I got put in therapy to see if there was something wrong with me. All these different things that they tried to see what was going on, but I just didn't present as like a hyperactive boy, honestly, at the end of the day. And that's typically what people picture, is this like kid running around in circles. And I didn't do that. I was just, constantly like looking around and doing something different instead of paying attention. but I could hear everything and I learned everything and it was super easy for me. So nobody ever thought about it as being potentially an ADHD. It also was like 40, no, not 40 years ago, 30 years ago. So, I don't think it was as prevalent back then either. It wasn't as big of a diagnosis. So, nowadays I think it might be a little bit easier to see in a person when they're younger, like 9, 10, 11 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Sam or Heather, do you guys have anything that you want to add?
I had a kind of a similar experience in where whenever I was a kid, I grew up, in the 90s, and I remember my mom talking about like all these kids being diagnosed with ADHD and their parents putting them on medicine. And I was struggling too in the second grade, in the first grade, because I was making good grades. I knew everything. It came really easy to me, but I was either daydreaming and not paying attention and looking out the window, or I was trying to talk to all of the other classmates. And I kept getting in trouble because I just wanted to talk and socialize the whole time. And I would just like bust through my work. And so I was not disruptive in like the bouncing off the walls, like just like Meghan. I was disruptive in I just wasn't paying attention. And it just made so much sense because I made really good grades whenever school was easy. But then it came to things where you had to apply yourself, like algebra. It tanked. Like I was struggling in high school. I didn't even get it. I didn't even make it to college. I was struggling in high school. It was, I made good grades and things that I already knew, like English. But anytime I had to apply myself or memorize anything, there was no sitting down and memorizing my like multiplication tables.
Mm-mm.
And it was like kind of shameful for me whenever I remember that, because like the third grade for me was when everyone memorized their multiplication tables. And at the end of the year, they got an award if they remembered all of them. And I didn't get one because I never, like, I couldn't pay attention to try to remember them. So that's like a vivid memory for me.
Same. Multiplication tables, they were the worst.
That's so bad. Yeah.
I can relate to Heather. Absolutely, I can relate to Heather. In elementary school, they had me in what's called EH classes, educational help. And I was angry, I was sad, I was frustrated. I didn't know why these kids around me were excelling. And the harder I tried, the worse it got. So it's like, I would try really, and it wasn't getting better. But I didn't realize that part of having ADHD is when you try too hard, it does get more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's a symptom of the challenge.
It's like quicksand.
Or the diagnosis is the symptom of it. And I tell my daughter, actually both daughters have challenges with that. And I say, listen, you need to take a breath and walk away and then come back when you're not frustrated, because that frustration just gets worse, like the law of attraction. The more frustrated you are, the more attracted to you to be frustrated about. So I had that challenge in high school with dating, jobs, and it was a real challenge for me. So when I found out it was an epiphany, oh my gosh, I'm not dumb. And it's out of what I have control of, and being on medicine helps to control that. So that's my, I related very well with Heather on that one.
Awesome. So next question. What's your take on symptom management? What do you do to mitigate your symptoms, and how has doing so improved your life? Heather, you want to start with that one?
Yeah. So I I have to do a lot of things to manage my symptoms. And the thing about whenever you're managing symptoms with any mental illness, something that works today may not work tomorrow. So you always have to keep switching up and trying something new. I have learned that for working from home, for experience, I've learned that I cannot start my work day until my dishes are clean. If I have dishes in the sink, I will not be able to focus on anything else other than the fact that there are dishes in the sink, no matter how hard I try. So I have to set myself up to not have distractions. I also found, and I've only been able to do this recently whenever I moved, but before I was working in a little off space from the living room of the house. So I wasn't able to kind of like close myself into an enclosed space while I was working. So I had to set the house up in a way where it would not be distracting. And that meant that every morning while I was drinking my coffee before I clocked in, I had to tidy up and move things where I can't see it. And God forbid my boyfriend be home that day from work, he would have to just go somewhere else. He couldn't be in the same room. Figure something out. Go hide in the bedroom. But medication has been the holy grail of helping me. It's changed my life in so many positive ways. So far, we are 20 minutes into this. I haven't interrupted anyone once. I'm very sorry.
That's awesome. You can come do my dishes. I wish that was a thing that I had, but it is definitely not.
Well, it's common for those with ADHD to struggle with keeping things tidy and clean. That's a very common symptom to having ADHD.
Yeah, absolutely. Meghan, what about you?
You know, I didn't even recognize that I had any things that I did to help mitigate my symptoms, except for, during the week, I will take medication, but on the weekends, I kind of try to stay away from it I figure I lived 39 years without it. So I take a little break and let myself wander. But during the week, I do tend to, I can't have music on. I can't have a TV on. I can't have any sort of distraction around me or even like an ancillary noise. If there's a drip in the sink, it will drive me insane and I will only focus on that. And so, during the week, I just have to make sure that I'm in my little space and that there's no leaky faucets. And, I still struggle because I am on workplace chat and on email and on conference calls all day. So I end up getting distracted enough just by that. So as anybody who's been on a meeting with me. So I try to just reduce any distractions, no music, no TV, no anything. And just hope for the best, man.
You know what? You get it all done. You do. I'm always so impressed. Sam, do you want me to reread the question or are you good?
No. I understand the question. The challenge with symptoms and the medication is you'll take one medication, like I've used Celexa and I've used some other, and one helps other, and then it doesn't help, and it does help. It's like a different time in your life, some help and some won't. So the problem I have, especially with a child that suffers, is what will work now won't work later on. And if it's hormones is involved, it causes another issue. So it's difficult to handle this a lot of times with the medicine because it's always changing. We're always changing, we're always learning, and we're always evolving. So sometimes the medicine doesn't work and sometimes it does. So that could be a challenge. And the amount of medicine has to be increased to help the symptoms. So that's kind of what I deal with my diagnosis.
Yeah, I've tried, lots of different ones before I finally found the one that, works for me the best, right? Cody, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm somebody that's big on to-do lists and scheduling and color-coded Excel spreadsheets to organize my day. And I have, stuff on those spreadsheets that are like not work related, but to me it's like, this is how I have to organize my day. And the problem with my method of this way of mitigating my symptoms is if that gets interrupted, sometimes I don't handle it well. But I think minimizing distractions is big. It's big for me to put down my phone when I'm having to concentrate, when I'm in a meeting, that kind of thing. And it's also big for me to have space in my day where I can be distracted, and that's allowed, to let my brain have a break, a breather, that kind of deal.
Absolutely.
And it's funny that I related to Heather's saying that she has to do the dishes, but in like the boy version of that is I have to play video games for like an hour before I start work, or all I'm gonna think is like, what am I gonna do on my video game when I'm done? Like I have to if I play a little and save and then go, I'm like, okay, I got something done this morning. But I feel like
that's funny.
As someone who also
That's
plays
awesome.
video games, I can't touch it. Like, no, like that's like my reward. Like if I'm playing a game, I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus. Like if I were to pick up a game before doing anything else, nothing else would get done. I would just hyper focus on that all day.
Mm-hmm.
The day would disappear for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say meditation, just so that I'll invite you guys all to come to Monday meditation.
Shameless plug.
I know, right? I'm a huge meditator. I meditate every morning, and it just to like start my brain in a calm, like in a calm space.
I find
I think understanding recently more about meditation has helped me, because I think I always brushed it aside as something I would never be able to do, because I really thought meditation meant completely empty your mind, let no voices speak. And that's not possible for me. You know what I mean? But I don't know if that's possible for anybody. That's not really what meditation is, though, right? It's just allowing yourself a sense of calm and breath, and don't try to control where your mind goes, that kind of, you know what I mean? So I think I'm better with it now. There are some kinds of meditation that just, it's not going to happen for me. I have a therapist that really likes to do this tense a part of your body and then relax it exercise, but she plays it from a video that takes 15 minutes to go through all the body parts, and the whole time my ADHD is screaming, hurry the freak up!
Yeah.
I have things to do.
I do that one, and then I try to like let it go and like not tense it up anymore, but it's still like let go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Megan, what were you gonna say?
Oh, sorry. I started reading a chat. See, this is like going to be the worst panel ever. Because nobody pays attention.
We're all going to be swirling all over the place.
I was gonna say, meditation, I was the same. I thought like I would never sit still for longer than 3 minutes. And then when I finally tried, I actually used the Calm app from sign in through eXp, and I do it in the morning. I don't clear my mind. There's no possible way in the world that I will ever clear my mind of like images and thoughts and everything. But what it does is it does like help me like streamline to like okay, what's going on today? And like I'm able to make better decisions for myself rather than feeling overwhelmed. Like I'll be sitting there and I'll try to meditate and I'll think about something that I've committed to. And then I start like, spiraling out about like, okay, well, I have to get prepared. So I have to start at 2, and then I have to do this. And then I'm like, or I could just say, no, I don't want to go anymore. And that's like what meditation does for me. And like, yeah, I'm like, oh, wait. But if I didn't meditate, I'd be like still like running on my circle and doing what I need to do. So I agree with you, Cody. Like it doesn't have to be this like huge, like profound peace and you're like in a mountain somewhere and flowers are falling on you. Sometimes it just helps you take a minute to like focus on one thing and see things a little bit clearer, even though you're still thinking about stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I also, a few years back, this came up and I'm still on the bandwagon, but sensory stuff for my hands helps me a lot. Otherwise, I'm tapping my feet. I was a tap dancer as a kid, so I'm doing routines in my feet under the desk all day, every day. Or I count numbers on my fingers, just patterns and that kind of thing. So what helps me is having something sensory. Like I keep a command strip that I can scritch on. Or I have
I'm like, you typically have your fidget spinner.
I always have my fidget spinner. I've got this fan that's about to fall apart because I fold it in and out 80,000 times a day. Like, yeah, it's that.
For me, I don't like to have a stationary seat. I like to have a seat that like moves so that I can just like do this, which I'm sure is like really fun for people to watch in meetings.
Yeah.
I'd also like to say real quick for anyone watching that does not know this, the Healthy Mind Collective hosts a Mindful Monday every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So you should definitely come and visit us. It's short and sweet and a great way to start the week.
Yes.
Yep. Just go to the DEI space in eXp world and then find the Zen Den, and that's where we are.
Yeah.
I feel like we just had like a podcast commercial break. That was awesome. That was fantastic.
By the way, let me tell you about my Casper mattress.
Absolutely. Okay. To the next question. So as far as medication for ADHD goes, there's a lot of stigma around it because there's a history of those drugs being involved in prescription drug abuse. So how did that affect your decision to receive or take meds for ADHD? And Cody, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, I got a big opinion on this one. We talk about that sort of joy of revelation of figuring out, hey, this is why everything makes sense now that I have this diagnosis. But my predominant feeling when I got the diagnosis was, does this mean I have to medicate? Because I'm like terrified. And I'm somebody with a family history of substance abuse with everybody in my family. So seeing people that I went to school with abusing Adderall, I knew people that did, it scared me a lot. So especially then when I did take the leap and say, yes, I would like to take medication, and the medication they selected for me and my symptoms was Adderall, and then they hand me the pill bottle over the counter and it reads dextroamphetamine, I was like, this is it. I'm going to die. Like, I'm going to get addicted to this and I'm going to die. That's I'm a little dramatic, but so for me, that knowing that, my therapist walked me through how it's not something you have to take every day. It's not something you have to take in the afternoon. It's something, actually, since you're an insomniac, you shouldn't take after 1 p.m. because then you won't sleep. So take it in the morning when you need it and then see how it goes. And that's okay for me, and I think Meghan had spoke about this too. Like I don't take it on the weekends. I need a break from it on the weekends. I don't take it on weekdays when I don't have a packed schedule. But it does sort of help me in a way that like unlocks a superpower I didn't know I had, the ability to focus. I guess that's how normal people feel, but I don't usually get that.
Yeah, the first time I took it, I realized I was working for a CEO at that point, and he moved really fast. He was brilliant and whatever. But I went into a meeting with him, and I walked out, and I was like, "Oh my God, I remember everything he said." I was just like, "This is the weirdest thing ever." Like, I would always remember everything because I would write everything down, but I actually physically remembered what he was talking about, and I was able to interact, and I wasn't getting distracted by the whiteboard and what's up there, and should we erase that now, or whatever it was. And that was my aha moment. I was like, this works. Oh my gosh, this is awesome. And
I relate to that so much because whenever I went in to get an assessment and a diagnosis, I was at my wit's end with myself over not being able to retain information out of meetings, over always having something or an idea pop in my mind and interrupt people in meetings. Like I was in like literal tears when I went in for my assessment because I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I try so hard to remember what people say to me. But I feel like I've spent the entire time worrying about how important it is that I remember what they say and then took nothing out of the conversation. And I know that I have like valuable things to contribute to the conversation, but because I can't pay attention to the conversation, I can't contribute anything. And I was just like searching for anything, any type of help. I was just desperate for it. So I wanted to take the medication. My experience with it was that like I was also reading forums online and about it. And first of all, whenever I got the medication, it took me a couple of weeks because the pharmacy was out of it. And then I had to find a pharmacy that even had the medication to fill it. So like I had plenty of time to read about it, read forums about people experiencing medicine for the very first time. And they kept saying that it was like an instant improvement in their life. Like the very first time they took it, it was like an eye-opening experience and they were able to focus. Unfortunately, I didn't experience that. I really thought I was going to take it that first day and everything would change and I would just be in like hyperdrive and get everything done and it was going to be incredible, but it wasn't. It was months and months of me trying to find the correct dosage and one that even worked on me, because it turns out that my ADHD is super severe and I needed like a higher dose. And it just made my mind really quiet. And I was like, whoa, I can think of one thing at a time, just one thing.
Yeah.
What's that? Like, I've never experienced this before.
Sam, what about you?
I just changed my mic. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Much.
All right. So with me, I found Adderall at one point, and I was taking it, and it really worked well. And I got a lot done. My wife said, when I was on medication with that, I would get the garage clean and I would do a lot and get a lot done. My heart broke when my doctor said, I don't want you on it because it's speeding up your heart. And not saying it's going to affect everyone the same way, but for me, it did that. So I had to adjust my medication and go on to another one. And it works pretty good. Doesn't work as well as Adderall. So I use a lot of natural things as well. I use mint to wake up my brain, which is a natural way to wake up. I use lavender to calm my brain, which helps when I'm anxious. And I teach my daughters to do the same thing. Because I don't want to add any more medication if we didn't have to. So on medication, I take it every day like I need to. And my wife's a nurse, so she makes sure that I do so as well. So having that support system is very important when it comes to taking the medication.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think while we're talking about medication, I just want to say that for me, taking it, it's been great, but it did make another adjustment for me. Like when I am medicated, I can focus on the tasks at hand, but then in life there are distractions that come up, right? My dog needs my attention, my cat needs my attention, my husband needs my attention, usually in that order. And I'm like incapable of, pulling away. So it's been a different way of organizing my day so that I can allow for those things to happen. And, I also have to say, I really would encourage anyone who is a manager of someone who you think may have ADHD or has told you they have ADHD to, give them the space to do work in their own time, in their own way. It's highly, highly likely that they're going to be effective or more effective if given the space to do the work in the way that they need to do it. And I haven't always experienced that because of my very specific way of being able to do my work. And I feel like now that I'm medicated, I'm not in that situation anymore. I'm sort of my own boss now. But because I work my way through my day in a manner that is so different than is typical, I feel like the wrong manager could think I was, not doing my job appropriately. So just wanted to throw that out there.
See, and I feel like that's like a huge shame because you could miss out on such talent as long as somebody's getting the job done that needs to get done. Who cares if they over worry and stress themselves and make 20? I mean, I care, but don't get me wrong. But if somebody needs to do something a certain way, you could miss out on such amazing talent. So it's such a shame to hear. I've been lucky. I think most of my previous managers also have been a little ADD. So I don't think they really noticed mine. I was more trying to manage up at that point, not here, just to be very clear. I'm not saying anything about my current management, but, previous. So, it's that just breaks my heart, to be honest with you. You could just miss out on so many great people.
Yeah.
And so many cool things if you just look at something at a surface level like that.
Absolutely. And we've talked about too, right, with medication, that it's not a cure-all, right? I mean, we still have ADHD. We can take medication all we want, but we're still going to squirrel, right? I mean,
Yes.
We've all done it like probably 20 times during this meeting already. And
Yeah.
I've taken my medication today. You guys probably all did too.
I actually remembered it.
Good.
Yeah. I think that's the point I was trying to get across was after I take my medication, it doesn't make me more neurotypical. It
Right.
makes me able to focus, but I still have ADHD and there are still things that baggage that comes along with me.
Absolutely.
I was chatting with somebody because they asked me something on workplace chat and I just said, I'm like, this is the most ADHD thing I've ever done. I'm on a panel about ADHD answering your chat about Mexico. Like this is
Right?
this is the most I've ever gone. This is like fantastic.
So how do you guys think your life would have been different had you been diagnosed earlier in life? Who wants to take that one?
I think I probably could have done more earlier. I think it probably wouldn't have taken me so long to get to where I'm at today. And I think that I struggled in a lot of ways. I did. I struggled in the types of work I was able to do in my early life as a teenager. The worst possible job that someone with undiagnosed ADHD could have is being a cashier, where you have to stand perfectly still and wait for customers to come to you. I realized the hard way that was not the work for me. that was my first job, and I thought something was wrong with me. Why this is so easy? Why is everyone else able to do this and happy? Why am I miserable? Why am I bad at this? I should not be bad at this. But it was because I have to do things. I can't. Being bored is the worst. And I think like if I had known earlier on that I needed to have certain things to function, it would have been a lot easier.
Yeah.
I can go. For me, I think because I was smart and able to get away with things, I think it caused this like anxiety that is underlying of always trying to make sure I look like I'm cool on the outside and having everything together. And so I do wonder if I had this diagnosis as a child, if, I would have less anxiety because I wouldn't have had 39 years of trying to show the world this like perfect, like I have everything under control, everything's organized, like just shoving stuff in drawers and like, whatever it takes. Um, so for me personally, I think, I'm very happy with where I'm at and where my life has led. So I don't know that I would want anything different, but that would be something that I think would have been a better effect on my life. The anxiety probably would be a little less.
Yeah, I think, for me, primarily growing up gay in the South, what was more pronounced for me was depression, shame, the living in a fantasy world kind of vibe that I did, like that was my vibe back then. I was not living in reality. And, I don't know that the ADHD meds would have helped me with that as a kid. And that was what was the primary driver of my depression then. And then I think if I would have been diagnosed in college, it absolutely would not have been good for me. Did I need those meds to help me get through school? Yes. At that point in my life, would I have gotten addicted to my meds? Yes. I think it needed for me to happen now, 14 years clean and sober, when I'm actively afraid of my medication is the only way that it works for me, So I don't, it could have come a few years earlier, but I think it came at the right time in my life for me personally.
Sam, what about you?
I go back in my mind and I don't like to shit on myself because it's not a good thing to do. It's a negative. But I go back in my mind at the same time and think, what could I have done better had I known what I know now? If I was going to go back and talk to my 13-year-old self and tell him, first of all, it's not so serious. You'll be okay. Love yourself for who you are. Don't change for anybody. And always do better and improve yourself. Because you're a good person, you're worthy. And that's pretty much, how I look at it like now. Because you can't go back and you can't change time. And I wouldn't be with my beautiful wife and I wouldn't have my beautiful twins if you change life before. Then who knows what kind of things that you wouldn't have had in your life because of knowing those things. So we're all where we are for a reason. I love real estate. I love being with my company. I love being with our company. I love my family. And the challenges that we have, everyone's got challenges, and you just deal with them one day at a time and one symptom at a time. So I hope I answered that question in that little bit of a little squirrel response.
No, it was great.
No, that was a great response.
I feel inspired.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Ready. Let's go.
Right? Yes. And
I'm going to go get some lavender.
For me,
Like Taylor
I've
Swift.
been diagnosed since I was a kid. I still feel like everything was hard, right? I mean, school was never my thing. School was always hard for me. Always got in trouble because I talked way too much. So even being on medication, it was still hard for me, right? And my anxiety was I was still a hyper anxious child. The only reason I got back on it as an adult, I will say, is because I felt like once I had a child, and she was like getting older and like, mommy, 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 mommy. I wasn't present, and I wasn't like being fully aware of all the things, right? Like I couldn't be the best mom that I could be. So I feel like that's one of the only reasons I got back on medication.
Something I've been wanting to say, and I forgot like 3 times. And so this is skipping like 3 questions. But medicine isn't like a magic drug. Like it's still hard. And you don't get to decide what you're going to focus on sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the ADHD takes over. Sometimes you take your medicine and you say, I'm going to focus on this. But the next thing you know, you've put together a 2,000-piece puzzle instead.
Yeah.
Like
Today I took my medication and said, I'm going to go write down my responses so I don't forget anything in this. And then I cleaned out a closet for 3 hours. Whoops.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what was the actual question?
You answered it already. We already went to you. We just went back to you.
Can we just invite everybody listening in too? Because let's just go for it.
Yeah, right. It's so funny. Okay, so next question. What advice would you give someone who thinks they exhibit symptoms of ADHD but hasn't yet brought it up with their doctor, counselor, or hasn't yet gone to seek any kind of evaluation?
Shocker, I would like to take this one. I think that I was really afraid of getting diagnosed with ADHD because I've been diagnosed with a lot of the wrong thing a lot. But exploring whether or not you have something is positive. It's a good thing because you can determine whether this fits or not even after a diagnosis. Doctors aren't always right, you know? For me, it fit. Finally, thank God. 17 diagnoses later, I finally got the one that addresses the root of the problem, which is great. But you also have to understand that if you go and you get diagnosed with ADHD, that doesn't mean you have to take meds. That doesn't mean your life is going to change. It means you can now know what it is that you're fighting, right? And there's a million different ways that you can combat it other than medication, right? And maybe the medication is something that works for you and helps. And obviously, like we said, is not a magic wand, but is an adjustment that maybe helps you be more impactful in your job or your life. But I just have to say to the people who think maybe this sounds like me, it's not that scary to get a diagnosis. It's not that big of a deal because you don't even have to tell anybody. You could just know in your own heart now, this makes sense for me. I know this is me. This is what I have to deal with, rather than it being a nebulous, I'm different, I'm dumb, I'm incapable of doing my job, whatever the things are that are presenting that's making you feel this way.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to add anything?
I would say don't watch TikTok, man, because it's going to tell you that you have everything.
Well, one, it's also going to do that, but it's also you're gonna spend hours on it.
Exactly, that too. Yes.
Right? Because it's like the best thing for ADHD people because everything's so different.
Yeah.
But they find you. All the ADHD videos find you and tell you that you have it. Oh, do you wake up in the morning and brush your teeth? You might have ADHD. So I would just say, be careful, like who you talk to.
Yeah,
that would be my advice. I would if you do feel like you have like some of the symptoms, I would say definitely talk to a professional just to kind of walk through it and see what the steps are. And don't be afraid. It's like Cody said, it's nothing to be scary. I mean, look at this group. We're freaking awesome.
We are.
I'm having the best time up here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I would ask the question.
Oh, sorry.
Do you want? It's okay. I would ask the question. Do you want to know? Are you interested in knowing if you have it or not? Are you comfortable with who you are and how you act? And is there something that you could do to better your life? And maybe that is what might help, is learning more about yourself. If there's something that is not clicking, or is there frustration? Is there anger? Is there things that you consider things that you have to work on? Then absolutely get a diagnosis and find out, because if it makes your life better, then do it.
Right. I also
Yeah.
think there's that kind of stigma that, there's that tried and true line of like, oh, look at all these kids getting diagnosed with ADHD. They're handing out these medications like candy. The thing is, it's not like a new thing that a lot of kids are being diagnosed with ADHD. We know more about ADHD now than we did in the past, and are able to make diagnoses where people were scared to in the past. And it's not like, oh, this is all of a sudden everybody has ADHD. Everybody's always had ADHD. We just didn't know how to handle it before. And it's a giant segment of people in the world that have ADHD. It's really prevalent. So I don't think you should look at that and be like, I don't want to be one of those sheeple that thinks they have ADHD, like all the people that think they have a gluten allergy, or, like not, people really do. Yes. People actually do. Yeah. Don't believe what the media is telling you. People actually do have ADHD and gluten allergy.
I would like to jump on to that wagon, Cody, in that girls were diagnosed less than boys in the 90s because girls present differently than boys when they have ADHD. They're not causing a ruckus. They're not annoying the class. They're not bouncing off the walls.
Nothing changes.
And Carly, in my case, we were just being chatty. And like whenever you think about it, that's like they are just like, oh, they're just being girls, they're just like chatting and talking, right? But like we were struggling. So like I would argue that a lot of people are getting diagnosed now because they were missed back then. And a lot of the people getting diagnosed now are women because we didn't realize that there is types of ADHD. There's the hyperactive type, and then there's the inattentive type. And women present the inattentive more often.
Yeah, that's my daughter. My daughter's more of inattentive.
Yeah. Have any of you guys experienced any sort of discrimination since being diagnosed?
Absolutely.
Sam shook his head yes. You have?
Yeah.
What have you experienced?
That was really tough on me. And I don't know if it was because of the military background, and he realized I had a military background, and he was just trying to be, just being like a drill sergeant, because he was a drill sergeant at one point. But yeah, I felt I was being discriminated against because of my challenges that I had. So yeah, it can happen.
Yeah. And I spoke about this briefly, but I had a manager who, this happens when you have someone that's sort of a micromanager and you're someone who does work differently. It was, in my mind, a manager should look at what is my expectation of this person? Are they able to get it done by the assigned time? If the answer is yes, you don't need to dig any further into what their day looks like, right? I'm somebody that if I organize myself correctly and then put my mind to the work, I will have done what your average person does in a day by noon, right? That's just where I get. But I also see the problems in the way that the work is done that I could fix, and don't always get those solutions. Don't always help for everybody, but for me, they really do. So I had a manager who didn't like that before I got started on work every day, the spreadsheets that we would work in Google Sheets, I would reorganize, color code, and move the columns around. It took me about half an hour every morning, right? But then once that was done, bam, 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 I was through the work like Mike Tyson, right? But that first 30 minutes of the day, they would be following me along in Google Sheets like, what are you doing? We're supposed to be doing at least one line every 2 minutes, and you haven't done any in this 30 minutes. And you're unnecessarily formatting these sheets. And like, basically, I was not meeting the expectation of the manager. But, you know, I think we really have to consider that people come from different levels of neurodivergence and accept those people. You know, something that I preach as our DEI director for eXp is that a good team is built of people who come at problems from different angles. And there's nothing more pronounced in that descriptor than people with neurological differences, right? If you tell me the problem is how did the chicken cross the road, and Heather comes at it with the basis of her thought process that comes from her childhood and comes from her neurological difference from mine, and I come at it with my same intersectional differences, and Sam comes at it a different way, and Meghan comes at it a different way. Even if we all came up with the same answer, if we walked through the thought process of how we got there, we would learn something that would make that answer more impactful than if everybody thought about it the same way. Period. That's the goal of having a diverse team. You have to be open to somebody looking at the problem a different way.
Carlie, I don't think we can hear you unless it's just me.
Oh, sorry. I said we literally have just a couple seconds left, so I just wanted to wrap it up with, what are the positives of having ADHD? Well, this is it. I mean, this was hilarious, right? I mean, we're funny people.
Multitasking, being able to hear 5 million things at one time. I could sit at a restaurant table and hear somebody say real estate two booths away, and it drives my wife crazy, but it also gets business.
Yeah.
I would say multitasking, and also being able to learn many things, the power of hyperfocus, and having many interests. I have many skills, most of them pretty obscure, which is great for icebreakers at a party. You know, name one obscure skill that you have that no one would guess. It's fun.
I have a lot of half-finished projects.
Same.
Yeah.
So, you know, anytime my daughter's like, I'm bored, I'm like, oh, here, finish painting this.
Yeah. I need Cody to come to my closet.
Right?
Because I'm the opposite of that.
And Heather to come do my dishes.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I think that's my superpower is I can learn anything if I put my mind to it. I just, as long as I focus and I take my medication, I can do it. I was telling you guys earlier the other day, I had bought a house that has a tree house in the back that had no ladder. So I was like, I'm going to go to the hardware store. I'm going to buy a ladder. By the end of that night, I taught myself how to build a staircase. So
yeah, you kind of go down that rabbit hole, don't you?
Right into the rabbit hole. There we go.
Yeah. I started with wanting to learn more about project management and get a project management, which turned into data analytics, which somehow turned into UX and UI design, which then ended up going into full stack developer. And here I am now trying to get my real estate license.
Nice.
I mean,
that was my last 6 months.
I can quote like 900 movies if that helps. I don't know. And I can watch TikTok like a mofo.
And
Same,
Meghan, can you oh my gosh, Meghan can pull up an Excel spreadsheet and create like any formula you could want in like 2 seconds. Like, and I'm watching her and I'm like, I have no idea what she's doing. She's like, I just have to do it out really quick. And I'm like,
it'll make sense in a second.
God, I don't even understand it.
Yeah. Moving to Google
Very
Sheets was
impressive.
hard for me. I was like, where's my VLOOKUP? Where's my, yeah. do it.
Spreadsheets. No.
Does anyone remember If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, the book?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's an example. If you took it into basic terms of what somebody that has ADHD does, if you give a mouse a cookie, then they'll want milk with that, and then the whole cycle comes back around. And that just popped into my head. If you give a mouse a cookie, because that's what we do. We go in. We go. It's a cycle, but we figure out different ways to give that mouse a cookie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are out of time. So we're going to let our panel go. Thank you guys so much for joining us. This was absolutely a treat to host, or what am I doing? What is this called?
Moderating.
Moderate.
And don't forget to go to the workplace groups and follow the Healthy Mind Collective and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion groups, as well as One eXp.
Yes. All
And
those.
come and say hello
Thank
to
you.
Carlie and I every Monday during Mindful Monday.
Woo!
Yes.
Thank you.